I'm Helen Norbury, and this is Becoming Unapologetically Me, the show all about authentic self-expression with expert guests from the fields of health, leadership, and mindset. This show is here to show you that you don't need to conform to the expectations that friends, family, and society have of you, and actually what we can unearth when we find the courage to become the unapologetic version of who we are. Grab a cup of coffee and get your notepad out for this week's episode. Hello, and welcome back to Becoming Unapologetically Me. Today, I'm really excited to be talking to Miriam Gilbert about the transition from corporate life to building a purpose-led and fulfilling business. And it's a journey that I know so many of my listeners are on some point of that. And I know, Miriam, you're really passionate about rehumanizing corporate culture and fostering meaningful change. So I'm super excited to dive into this conversation because I think we're totally on the same wavelength.
So pleased to be here. Thank you.
Could you start by sharing a bit more about your own personal journey from the corporate world to where you are now, founding Impactfulness Lab, and what inspired that transition?
Well, to be honest, a lot of my journey has been very serendipitous. I ended up in corporate by accident. I also came out of it by accident. But I basically decided that corporates weren't, I have to retract myself a little bit. I was going to say corporates weren't quite right for me. That's not true. I actually love working with corporates and I really enjoy the right kind of corporate environment. And what I realized when I decided to come out of corporate is that the standard traditional environment wasn't the one that I wanted to continue. It coincided with the fact that I was pregnant and about to have my first child and working crazy long hours because I had risen the career ladder. And, it's that moment when you go, 8 months pregnant and you sit there and go like, what am I doing at 10 o'clock at night in the office? This is not the kind of life I want for me and for my child. So it was that moment that really made me go, no, there has to be something else. And I didn't know at that particular time what that something else was, but I really wanted to explore that.
It's often those big life changes, isn't it,
Yep.
that prompts you to kind of have a look at life and get off the hamster wheel a little bit and go, is this what I want to do? Is this the environment I want to be in whilst I'm bringing up a child and, or any of the other big life changes that come as well. But I get that with the sort of the shift around becoming a mom as well.
It was all of that made me think. And probably then after my son was born, fueled by endless sleepless nights, then you realize, oh my gosh, I can't actually go back. And you just think like, well, there has to be something better. And you see, in my corporate career, I had actually been very lucky that I'd worked with some amazing people. I had some really good bosses. I had some lovely, lovely colleagues. So I'd always been, in very positive environments. And yet I could see that even those, for example, my bosses tried to create opportunity for people to work in the way that works for them. I mean, I did some remote work before that word existed. And I just realized that if we can be a bit more flexible in the way how we organize work, in the way how we structure work, in the way how we relate to people, then actually working in corporates can be great. It can be absolutely fabulous. It doesn't have to conform to the, toxic cliche that we all think of when we hear the word corporate. When I decided that I needed to change something, I thought, well, why don't I take my experience and my expertise, because I've led large teams, I had led really big projects. Why don't I take that and help the kind of bosses that I had, help them restructure the way that work gets done, rethink how they could lead their teams, how they could make the environment something that are really conducive to innovation and collaboration, and where people, as much as you can enjoy getting up and early in the morning to go to work, but where people are actually, happy with doing that. Yeah. That's really where it came from.
Amazing. What were some of the biggest challenges? Because it is different working on your own or in a sort of a small team compared to that corporate world, the corporate life. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced as you started to step away from corporate, and how did you overcome those?
The biggest challenges are really setting your own directions, I find. And I learned fairly early on, and I guess I was lucky that I had mentors when I was in corporate, that I knew the importance of having mentors. So I very early on decided that no, I will invest in mentorship. I will invest in putting myself into communities where people, doing similar things to me are, so that I have other people to relate to that, who are on the same journey. So I realized that that's how I overcame it. But I have to say, I think most people underestimate how much mental labor you have to bring to the game if you are self-employed, because you have to know what you want, you have to decide what to do, you have to give yourself the pep talk if things don't go quite as you wish, you have to, be your own cheerleader, you have to go out and do the celebration.
I think you're right. It's that social element and the connection element of the corporate culture that can be really hard for people to understand what it's like not having that. And sometimes it can feel frustrating when you're inside of it and you're like, oh dear, do we have to have another conversation about whose turn it is to wash up the coffee cups in the kitchen? But it can feel frustrating, but then when you don't have it, it can feel a little lacking and missing unless you are very intentional about recreating that in some format, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, definitely. It's all the social aspect, and it's also when you are in a corporate role, know what the expectations are. Your boss or your peers will tell you, well, we need to have this done by X, and you might be part of making the decision of what that looks like. And in my last few roles, I was a CFO, so I got to decide what the budget should look like. But there were still other stakeholders around you that also influence what you're going to go for and what
you're playing by a rule book. And then when the rule book gets taken away, it's like, oh, how do we play a game without any rules? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So can you tell me a bit or describe what rehumanizing corporate culture means to you and how you go about promoting that?
Oh, it's my favorite topic. Rehumanizing work has been my mantra ever since I started, because my first business, which I still run now, is corporate consulting. So while I teach others how to win corporate clients, how to get more corporate clients, I still do that myself because I have a real passion to change the way how we see corporate culture. I say that word and everybody automatically says equals toxic. And I think that's horrible because let's face it, as a society, we will always need corporates. Entrepreneurship is wonderful, yet it'll be really, really tricky to build a plane or to run an internet, system, or to develop, medicines and all that. You can't do it. So you do need corporates. But I have this hypothesis is, what if we can change the way how corporates operate? If we can change the way how they can fund themselves internally, and if we can change the dynamics that are going on in there, because it has been shown that when people feel happier at work, then they behave in more ethical ways. And that is, to me, an unbelievable motivator, because I know that when people feel happier at work, and there's things I can do to help them feel happier at work, they will make better decisions around, oh, should we invest in environmentally friendly filters for our waste products? Or should we investigate if our supply chain uses any forced labor or child labor or anything like that? Or shall we just turn a blind eye? And those kind of decisions are made by people. We blame them on corporates, but they're actually made by people inside these corporates. So if we change their attitude, if we change how they act, we're literally changing the world.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, because a corporate is just made up of a sum of people, isn't it? And each of those are individuals who presumably have homes, families, friends, live their lives in the same way that all the rest of us do. And so how we bring out that very human side of who they are outside of their work and bring it inside of their work, it shouldn't be rocket science, should it?
No, absolutely. And I found that, because I was a consultant, I trained with PwC. So I got to see a lot of companies from the inside, and I got to see a lot of boardrooms on the inside. And actually, there weren't that many people who were complete A.
I know the one you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. There's some, but that's, it's not the majority. It's not even a large minority. What I find is very often people who might behave in ways, that are or micromanaging or all of the other negative trends that we associate, they are stuck in systems and structures where they feel that pressure, where they don't have a release, where they maybe don't have the training, but don't have the emotional intelligence, don't have the communication skills, all of those kind of things that we as, if you're a coach or a consultant in any of these topics, you can help changing that. You can literally change it.
Yeah. So how do you integrate AI practices to enhance team performance while still maintaining that authenticity and human connection? Because those two things almost sound like a contradiction in terms.
I'm having great fun with that. And I see that playing out over and over again. We just need to think differently about both ourselves and about AI, because AI, at the end of the day, is a machine. It's a very, very useful machine, but so are cars and mobile phones and so on. Are we saying because we have a car, we can't have human connections? Of course not. And yet, when pretty much any time there was a leap in technology, throughout history, there was an initial reaction of, oh, this will undermine some of the connections between people, undermine some of the fabric of the society. While that is true, that it changed these things, is over time, humans keep coming back to have connections. And I think with AI, what we need to do is to just be very mindful, very clear that it is a tool. It's an amazing tool, as helpful as, I don't know if anybody who's listened had to learn to write on a typewriter and then jump to a computer, a completely different world game. But it's the same with AI. You can get a lot done, and there is a lot of risks and so on involved. But you have to think of that in that way. And then the moment you think of it, then you can start going like, okay, what does it mean for our team? So if you have a team where somebody was an analyst, and you had a team where somebody was somebody who created something creative, and you had something else, you'd be like, okay, we're not replacing any single person here, but we're looking, are there individual parts of their jobs that could be improved with AI? And the key in all of this, and this is how we, in my corporate consultancy, create really quick change very fast, is we don't tell people what the answer is. We get them to work out what the answer is.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked in change for, in a similar role to what you probably had with PwC. And yeah, absolutely. When it's your idea, then you're much more likely to embrace it and run with it and make it work.
100%. And with AI, the funny thing is as well, because nobody has the full answers. It's not like a big technology like a CRM or anything as such. So you need to be a lot more creative. You need to be a lot more experimental. So the teams that get really, really amazing results are the ones that we're coaching them to, think about yourself differently. What would you do if you had a magic wand to, take away one of your big annoyances?
So what are some of the biggest mindset shifts that you personally experienced or that you've witnessed in other people in that transition from corporate to much more heart-led businesses?
I think the biggest one, and I even have to catch myself occasionally on that, and then I remind myself, the biggest one is to have the courage to be yourself. to actually embrace not just who you are, but also who you want to be. I'll explain what I mean by that, because it's one thing to say, yeah, bring your whole self to work, bring your whole self, and that's great. Absolutely do that. And I certainly do it. My corporate clients love it. For a while, I was rocking pink hair. So it's having that courage to step out of what you perceive as the corporate, stereotype that you have to fit in. And then at the same time, I sometimes love getting dressed up in a, smart suit and looking all corporate-y and playing that role. That can be really good fun. But I know all the time that I don't have to do this. I don't have to be that person. So you get to choose who you want to be. And it's a joy and a piece of courage at the same time. So there's duality there.
Yeah. Probably links into something else I wanted to ask you, in fact, about someone who is maybe in a corporate career at the moment thinking, I'd really rather be doing something of my own, but they're hesitating or they're not sure where to start. What would be your top piece of advice that you could offer them?
My top piece of advice would be to start playing with the idea of, well, first off, what do they really want? And I think we're putting too much pressure on ourselves trying to find our purpose. What is the big thing? And well, how about we just play around? What do I enjoy? What do I have fun with? If I go to the pub, what is it that I don't shut up talking about? That's always a good thing. What is the thing that you just love talking, spending time thinking about, and so on? Then, yeah, well, obviously you do need mastery. You do need a certain amount of expertise in that. And I would not necessarily leave your job, but go and start playing with it. If you're passionate about coaching people, can you just try it out, play around? You don't need to make it a big deal. Experiment, get feedback, because nothing as powerful as understanding what's actually going on in the real world, in the real situation with people, rather than just in your head.
I think also around that is most of us are in a position where we need to make some money through our careers, but at the same time, we want to do something that feels good, helps us to kind of fulfill that vision or purpose if we know it. But I absolutely agree with you. We shouldn't get too hung up on that. What do you think that balancing act looks like so that we can still make money and feel fulfilled and live our vision and our purpose out? How do you start to balance all those elements up?
Well, part of that is going to bring my CFO hat, which is you have to, be a bit dispassionate and just sensible. What are your savings? Do you have your runway? Can you maybe work part-time? Can you, how can you make sure that you have a roof over your head and you can pay your bills and also not just roof over your head and pay your bills, but also live at least a bit of the life that you want. So if I can't afford to go on a holiday once a year, then I will get a job. That's an important part of life to me. So, there is just a very practical, sensible element in there. The other side, I think, is actually, and I wish I had started that earlier, is to ask yourself the real questions of, what do I believe about myself? Because, for example, for a long time, I believed I had no questions around money. I didn't have any money mindset issues at all. I mean, come on, I'm a chartered accountant. I was CFO. I was in charge of literally hundreds of millions. In fact, it was a £3 billion budget that I was in charge of. So how can I have money mindset issues? And when I realized, actually, no, there is things around there. There are things of what I perceive the value of my work to be, what I perceive the value of my ideas and thinking to be, how I tie my worth up with money, and so on and so on. It was quite a wake-up call. I would highly recommend to anybody who is, considering leaving a corporate job is do the, slightly more boring factors. Do play around, have fun with your, what might excite you, but also ask yourself the questions. What do I really believe about myself, about the things I can do, about my expertise? And if, again, speak to a mentor or do some courses or something, because I know if I had done that, some parts would have definitely been easier.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, I guess it's not your money, is it, in the corporate world? So it's a little easier to kind of play with in a way. So how do you think that the concept of leadership is evolving, given that the corporate landscape is constantly changing, as we kind of alluded to at the earlier part of this conversation, that sort of shift to remote or hybrid working? And how does the role of leader have to, or is it changing in the context of this new world for corporates?
I would like to think, and I do think at the moment we're seeing a bit of the pendulum swinging backwards, unfortunately, but that will just be short term, I'm sure. I do see that, well, successful leaders always have been the ones who are flexible, who have flexible leadership styles, who know when to be more directive because somebody needs it or is actually asking for it, and when to be more laid back, more hands off, and trust the people that they have hired who are meant to be experts. Those have always been the most successful leaders. And I think that has become more important than ever. So the whole debate around hybrid working and remote working and all that, it irritates me no end when I hear companies saying, oh, but there's no collaboration if you're not in the office. I'm like, well, actually, if you look at the statistics from before the pandemic, there was also no collaboration then. So
yes, it's changed. Yeah.
No, actually. And, now they're citing engagement statistics saying it's low. It's like, well, yeah, they were pretty low before too. Again, nothing has changed. Leaders that I see who do really, really well don't apply a cookie cutter approach to their teams. They don't treat everybody in exactly the same way while, and this is a smart bit, while still maintaining equity for everybody, so has the support they need to be their best selves at work.
100%.
While that might not be the same thing that everybody gets.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So what role do you believe that empathy and emotional intelligence play in building these really successful and authentic workplaces?
Cannot have enough of it. It's literally, it's impossible to overdose on those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And so if someone's looking to make a change, whether that's in a corporate environment or whether it's in a much smaller entrepreneurial space as well, what are some of the practical steps and strategies that you think someone can take to make that change really meaningful?
I mean, I'm somebody who always likes to work backwards. And what I have learned over time is that this is something that was very difficult for me at the beginning, is I like to work from the goal in mind and then work backwards of how do I get to that goal. What was hard for me at the beginning was to think like, oh, it has to be that big goal. It has to be the end goal. It has to be the ultimate end goal. It has to be the thing. And I realized actually, no, it's fine just to have a goal that feels good for the moment and to evolve that time. Remember, one of the most useful things a mentor said to me, and I didn't know that at the time. In fact, I rejected it at the time, but this person said to me, the business that you are starting now is not the business they're going to be running for a long time.
Correct.
What do you mean? Of course I will be. This is it. This is my goal. And of course they were right.
I'm sure this isn't I know it isn't a new concept, but there's certainly a lot of talk from Gallup and the World Health Organization about the impact of burnout at the moment in corporate culture. Personally, I have a belief that that's where you find a lot of conflict between who you are as a person and the job that you're doing or trying to do at the moment. So how do you think, well, A, do you agree with that for starters, but also how do you balance up those two sides of yourself to kind of negotiate with yourself or with the organization that you're working with to get that balance between the expectations of the corporate organization that you're working for and what you value personally, like you were sharing earlier, whether that's going away on holiday for yourself, going out for a run each day, or whatever those things are that are important to you, where they may feel in conflict with what the corporate organization wants and needs from you as well.
I think there is so much duality in there. So, of course, you get burned out if you feel a strong sense of cognitive dissonance between who you feel you are deep down versus what is on the outside. But it's not that there's not black and white, in my opinion, because unless there are some values, like there's some really strong health beliefs and values that you have, and that the organization you work for is completely opposite, then it's probably a case of you should not be there if possible. Yes. So I would not work for an arms dealer, for example. That's just not it.
Yes.
so there's but then from there down are degrees of what are the different, how much is it? And I think we have both the responsibility to look at what do they expect and what can I provide, but also how does that fit with my beliefs and my values? Is it really completely different? Or do I just have a different opinion, which is a different, level of severity? And then if it's a difference of opinions, I remember being very different opinions of my bosses in one project that I was incredibly passionate about, for example. They were the bosses, so I had to go along, and it worked because I had enough respect for them. So having respect for your boss, your peers, your colleagues, people who work for you is really important. And if you can't have that, again, then you have to ask yourself, why is it, and can you change it? Because if you can't have that, it's really, really tricky, and that would contribute a lot to the feeling of burnout. Yeah. I do also sometimes say, and this is absolutely not victim blaming, but I do sometimes say people holding on too tightly on an idea of what it should be. So there needs to be flexibility, which is absolutely not going against your values or, giving up on yourself. 100% not. On the positive side, I'm obviously not encouraged by the level of burnout, but I'm encouraged by the fact that we're talking about it.
Yes, that's definitely a positive.
Yeah,
yes.
30 years ago, nobody talked about it. And this is probably about 10 years ago again, when the CEO of, was it Santander, the big banks? I think it was Santander. And like the highest person of that stepped back and said, I have burnout. I'm like, wow. Yeah. I mean, obviously I felt terribly sorry for him, Yeah. But I thought this is a positive thing that we're talking about it, that we're recognizing it, because only then can we actually do something about it too.
Absolutely. And realizing that the answer to the problem is not power through, which is I think 100%. What so many of us have been taught. Just keep going. It will be all okay at some point. But to recognize that sometimes stopping and resting is absolutely the best thing that you can do for yourself and for everybody else around you as well.
100%, yeah.
So the definition of success in the corporate world is usually focused around numbers. So has your definition of success evolved since you've stepped away from that world and creation of Impactfulness Lab?
Well, yes. I mean, it's yes and no, because for me, I love numbers, but I look at them quite well, yes, obviously. But I look at them quite differently. I look at what is the story that they're telling. And so an example is, if I lead a project that I'm really passionate about and I deliver that, on time, within a certain budget, and it has an amazing impact on the people who it's supposed to serve. These are all numbers, tell the story of, something of work really well done. I think for me, the definition of success in that way has always been a job well done, something well done. And that is where the traditional focus of corporates on just number, mainly bottom line, is completely wrong-headed, because 9 times out of 10, that tells you nothing about whether they're doing a good job. It tells them about their financial, management capabilities, but that's it. It doesn't mean their clients are happy. Doesn't mean that people are happy. Doesn't mean they're innovative. Doesn't mean that they will still be around next year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, there's a lot of arms to success, isn't there, that need to be considered, not just looking at it one-dimensionally. So what comes next for you? What are the kind of the goals, the aspirations, where you want to take Impactfulness Lab? What are the the biggest changes you want to be a part of?
Well, what I really want to do is create more of an ecosystem, because at the moment I have the two businesses, the corporate consulting, particular about the exciting changes that I think that are open to organizations to become actually better for people with AI, and the side where, mentor experts of how they can also come work more with corporates. And I really would like to merge that more so that we almost create a movement, a group, a tidal wave of change creators. So that is something that I'm actively working on.
I'm definitely going to be keeping my eyes open for that, and to kind of see how that all evolves over the coming months and years. I've so loved having this conversation. I knew I was going to love having this conversation with you, because I'm totally on the same wavelength. I think it's so important to bring the human back into the center focus, whether it's in organizations, whether it's in a sort of an entrepreneurial journey as well, but to remember who we are and to build those connections between humans and individuals. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been so much fun. I really enjoyed it. I love those questions. I'm going to be thinking of them a lot. And yes, I really, really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Becoming Unapologetically Me. Make sure you subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts so you never miss an episode.